With games like Baldur's Gate, Planescape Torment and Fallout, the role-playing game, formerly a champion genre of PC gaming, is slowly dying. It's kicking up games like Dragon Age and its death throes, but they are death throes. It's being replaced by the shooter with very light role-playing elements by games like Mass Effect and Fallout 3. And what games like Fallout 3 and Mass Effect have done to the RPG, Borderlands is now doing to the action RPG. The action RPG, often referred to as the hack and slasher, is a genre based entirely around character development. You collect items, weapons, armour and trinkets, you assign points to your statistics as you level up, and you acquire and improve a broad number of abilities selected from branching skill trees, all with the end result of the creation of a personalised character unique to your own experience. And it's that character development that keeps you going, because the actual mechanics of play are quite simple and unsustainable in and of themselves. You simply click on enemies repeatedly, casting spells, using skills and so forth. Borderlands, by being a first-person shooter, has strived to and very much succeeded in making the actual mechanics of play far more engaging and fun than in its hack-and-slash cousins, but in doing so it has needlessly sacrificed character development upon which the genre relies so heavily. You play as some guy trying to find the fabled vault, a place that may or may not exist which supposedly holds great power. The game takes place on another planet called Pandora, probably in an attempt to distance itself from the Fallout series it owes so much to. But the currency is the dollar, the environment is so very familiar, and just about everyone speaks with an American accent, so it may as well be set in, well, let's say Southern California. Just as you begin your search for the vault, you're contacted by a character referred to as the Guardian Angel. What she is exactly is unclear, but her projection's funky visual style ought to give you a clue. You're told that the vault is real, and that only you can find it. It's not an engaging story in the slightest, but this is not a genre known for its storytelling anyway, and what it does well enough. You begin the game by selecting one of 4 classes: the shotgun and assault rifle expert soldier, the sniping hunter, the huge brawling berserker, and the sneaky siren. From here you fight your way to the first quest hub, where you'll meet a character or two. These guys will send you off to a number of satellite areas where you'll kill stuff and complete quests, level up, move on to the next quest hub, do a bunch more quests, level up some more, and so on. It's a structure that will be especially familiar to anyone who's played Hellgate London, or any fairly modern MMORPG. As a first-person shooter, Borderlands is incredibly playable. Besides some occasionally pathetic human AI, the gunplay is fantastic. It's a near-perfect combination of enemy difficulty, enemy numbers, enemy diversity, and environment size. You'll fight bandits, dog-like monsters, huge, flying bat-like monsters that swoop down at you, insect monsters, and more. There are quite a few enemy types that share AI, so sometimes you'll have a dog monster leaping at you, and sometimes it'll be an insect monster performing the exact same animation, but there is a ton of diversity. Even within the same enemy type, some will bite at you, some will leap at you, others will fire projectiles at you. And the way you fight these enemies is also interesting. Each enemy has a critical location, the shooting of which will cause additional damage. For humans, obviously it's the head. For the insect monsters, it's on the abdomen, which is at the rear, meaning you have to get behind it. For the dog monsters, it's inside their mouth, so you have to time your shots pretty well for that. You'll also find that different combinations of weapons have better effects against some enemy types. Some human enemies have energy shields, and using a shield depleting gun before switching to something else will work out best, while most enemies become more vulnerable to all forms of damage while under the effects of corrosive damage. All this means that you're very involved in the process of attacking enemies. It becomes a far more intellectual process than simply point and shoot. Yet thanks to the meaty sound effects, the great feel of the weapons and the exploding heads, the game is also as visceral as you'd ever want it to be. As a shooter, it is a ton of fun, but as an action role-playing game, it has no shortage of shortcomings. To begin with, there aren't any real character stats in the game. All you have are weapon proficiencies, which simply get better as you kill stuff. This severely limits your ability to customize your character, while also limiting the complexity of the game, and cutting down on the actual rewards the player receives for progress. The skills each class has available to buy as you level up are mostly statistical modifications to base values like health and weapon damage, which is very, very boring. You rarely get the sense that you've actually improved your character because it's all passive, below the surface stuff. What the game needs is more unique abilities, and there are some. Like in the soldier's medic tree is an ability that lets him heal allies by shooting them. These interesting skills are, however, in the minority. You also have to spend 5 points in each skill tier to unlock the next, meaning you can't simply put 1 point into less desirable skills and hoard your points for things you actually do want later on, which is the genre standard. This makes the development of your character feel quite forced and far less personalised. Despite being filled with character development elements, they're all completely, and worse, needlessly underdeveloped. When gaining a new level, all you'll probably have to look forward to is buying a 5% improvement to your shotgun damage or 3% more health. Without constant, good rewards to incentivise you, the whole system falls flat. But the cardinal sin, the worst possible crime any game trying to be an action RPG can commit, is that of too few items, or in this case, too few item slots. Take a typical action RPG and you'll have a paper doll of your character with perhaps as many as 10 item slots. These items help you create a truly personalised character, and also mean that with so many possible items dropping, character improvement is a frequent and ongoing process, meaning you're constantly rewarded. In Borderlands, you have a maximum of 4 weapon slots, you have 1 grenade modifier slot, you have 1 shield item slot, and you have 1 class mod slot. If we discount weapons for a moment, that means there are a mere 3 slots for items. Not only is that a ridiculously low number, there's very little room for customization because of the statistics they alter. Your shield item is exactly that, a shield. Its statistics are primarily shield capacity and rate of regeneration, and then it may have an additional modifier, like health regeneration. Your class mod item offers statistical modifications ranging from the class specific, like enhanced skills, to the generic, like increased experience. The grenade mod is far more interesting. You can alter your grenades to do different types of damage, or to do damage in different ways. The most interesting grenade mod I've found so far siphons life from everyone in the blast radius and transfers it back to you. It's absolutely ridiculous how few item slots there are, and how few items you collect as a result. The only real saving grace as far as items go is the weapons. Weapons are split down into several categories: shotguns, assault rifles, revolvers, and so on. Each weapon has 3 basic statistics: damage, accuracy, and rate of fire, and then there are potential modifiers to those statistics, as well as things like doing elemental damage. There are thousands, if not millions, of weapons in the game. The vast majority of them are of course the same basic gun, but each drop will have its own unique combination of statistics. This means you'll probably never have to play for more than an hour before finding something that marginally improves on one of your 4 weapons, so there is at least some fairly regular sense of character improvement as far as weapons go. The one good RPG element is the quests, and they really drive the game. There are tons of them in the game, and although I barely read a single quest description, they were all interesting. They range from collect X number of item Y scattered around the area, to kill enemy X, to, well, that's it actually. You're really always going to be shooting something or collecting something, or both. But it never feels like grinding, because the basic gameplay, the combat, is so fun, especially if you're playing with friends. If this game had the character development of Diablo 2, it would be damn near perfect. The world of Pandora is pretty huge, so you can expect the game to take you from 20 to 30 hours to play, and there's good reason to replay, not the least of which being to experience the other classes. Being such a big game full of so many mechanics, you can imagine it being pretty overwhelming. Well, it actually really isn't. The introduction of new gameplay elements is staggered perfectly. You don't receive skill points until level 5, you can't take on more than 1 quest at a time until around level 9, you won't get your car until around level 12. Different types of items are introduced gradually, and you won't unlock quick travel until around level 18. Borderlands' learning curve is one of the best I've seen in a game. The game is also stylistically amazing. You're either going to love or hate the visuals and the offbeat style as a whole. I love it. Borderlands is filled with nods to things that have influenced it, and it's a pleasure to spot them dotted around the game. You'll see nods to Fallout, Team Fortress 2, Bioshock, Mad Max, Diablo 2, and I'm sure there are many more I haven't spotted yet. I know a lot of people who hate cartoony visual styles in general, but Borderlands is a beautiful game, and it clearly doesn't want for fine detail. It's also pretty remarkable that it's running in UE3. If it weren't for the texture popping when loading a new area, and the dodgy shadows, I would never have known. Borderlands is definitely up there with Mirror's Edge as the best looking UE3 game. Borderlands' closest relative is probably Hellgate London. Hellgate totally nailed the character development and screwed up pretty much everything else. Borderlands has totally nailed everything else, and pretty much screwed up character development. But all things considered, this does mean there's a lot to love in the game. Think of it as a first-person shooter, and Borderlands is a very solid experience. But if they'd gone all the way with the character development, Borderlands would have been a serious contender for Game of the Year. As is, it's a good game.